Are are we live? Yes, we are live. Hello, everybody, to a classic Saturday stream where today we're going to be continuing our D&D story time. But I'm afraid we have to take a little bit of a moment at the beginning here because we have some introductions, some welcomes, and a couple of redeems to get through. And thank you, Lotus. I will, of course, hydrate. Thank you, Sour Cake. I love it too. But, before we can get into all of that, that's right, Terramon, for our two lovely newbies here to introduce themselves to fellow tardigrades, to learn a bit about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm afraid our friend Terramon here has redeemed a very special reward for the both of you. So, as a traditional welcome, hey, Pickle Wizard, I just I just wanted to say, Ura, Ura. And don't worry, body grade. Cause you see, body grade, I just needed to tell you, Ara, Ara. Oh god, Terramon, why? Why do you make me do this to all the newbies? You're going to scare people off at some point. They need to be slowly brought into it. You can't just throw a frog into a boiling pot of water. Oh man. But hey, how's it going, Mortis? Marciel making it just in time for a very inappropriate redemption, in my opinion, but yes. Welcome, as Little Pink Bowser saying, to our weekly D&D story time, where either I tell you stories of the current campaign I am running for my players, an ongoing campaign of almost over a year now, or I go full Samarillion on your ass. Because you see, we are playing in a custom setting that I have made myself. If you are at all, did that not work? Archive. God damn it, Halfrest. Can't do that. What is up with that? Alright, give me a minute, y'all. I need to go check my Nightbot. Well, in a second, I will post you up my archive channel where I have stored up all my past D&D story times and my lore videos, where I explain how I go about creating my own setting, some homebrewed classes, races, magical items, and how I begin to create something from scratch for Dungeons and Dragons. Lucky for all of our newcomers today is not a deep dive into lore, an exploration into creating something from scratch, nor an instance of us creating one of the most terrifying soap-based monstrosities that has ever existed. Instead, today is a continuation of our story time. So with that, we will have to do a bit of a recap, of course. Ah, there we go. Milk was having problems with Nightbot too. Yeah, might be something just really big is up. Let me just check one of my other more basic ones. Huh. Yeah, seems like the full Nightbot is up. Why have you all redeemed those? Am I gonna have to go turn those off on you? Lord. This isn't Mass Effect. You can't overheat my weapons here. Yo, I have written a fanfic based on Terramon's list. I already wish you fun reading it during the subathon. Oh god. Eric, you gotta throw up the times. It's the rules. Alright. Alright, 1 second. Okay, give me a second. I gotta grab it from here then. I don't have this stupid thing included in all of my scenes. Let's see your paste a reference. Alright, this is gonna take a second to look. There, you guys happy? You happy to cover the screen with this weird overlay that doesn't even make sense for the Dungeons and Dragons story time? Fine, have it. Have it, you monster. What did we put in maid, Eric? Oh, the tardy maid has been up since I think halfway through last stream where we had Mass Effect going. But 1 second, because I gotta say, Wako, nice. Lotus, nice. Gremlin Hunter, nice. This VOD is gonna be great. Oh, fuck. Luckily, I just archive. I don't actually have to do any video editing for my shit, but now you can't use your shotgun in D&D. Luckily, nobody in my party is an artificer, so not a major problem. Nor a gunslinger. To be fair, as we were starting, because I was going for more of a high fantasy type of setting, I did ask my players that unless they really, really wanted to play one of those classes, to try and avoid it. So I think it's because I have such nice players. Eric, yeah, I brought the tardy maid. Yep. Yeah, it was Halfrost getting the redemption because he wanted to see just a little leg, I believe. But we cannot have everything put aside for too long. So, before we get into the recap, I only have one more question for you all. Wait, are there actually shotguns in 5th? I believe the Artificer can make a walking cannon that functions as a shotgun, and the Gunslinger Fighter subclass gets the option to use a blunderbuss. So, yes, there are a couple of types. Do you have a tardigrade with the drip? Oh. Barty grit. Oh, right, none of these work. 1 second. I'll just post that up for all of you. I have a redeem to actually get me to change costumes into any of those you see listed here. I have quite a few, and if you would like to take a look, I'll just do a quick rotation. Oh, Terramon, all right, we'll see you later, okay? We got the cowboy. Space cowboy. We got the Godfather. A dapper tardigrade. The maid. My Halloween costume of a succubus. And yes, we've got ourselves some drip. But for now, we're on the tardy maid due to our last redeem. Now then, one last question before we get into the recap of everything. How have all of y'all's weekends been? How for us sounds like you've had an exciting time finally moving into your place. But how is everyone else doing? Excited to hear the next part of our story now that the party has approached the haunted house. Excited to see what happens with our poor, love-struck prince. Or perhaps there is some real life news some of you would like to share or talk about. I want to know, how is everyone doing? I myself had a rather interesting morning because I spent it just catching up on the new Netflix series Arcane, as they just released part 2 for that, and I had to watch the entire thing in one sitting. I might have an unhealthy interest in League of Legends lore. Dapper grade. All right, we've got the costume change in, which means we're going dapper here. Oh, my PC's hard drive is dead, but hopefully I'll be getting a new one tomorrow. Hell yeah. Sorry it died out on you. Luckily, that's an easier part to replace. A lot of computer parts tend to be tricky, though. Normally, mostly laptops are actually what have a hard time getting fixed or replaced. I know I've had a bitch and a half of a time whenever I've had a laptop start to break down. They just cram things in too tightly there. My day was pretty bad, sour no. I was stuck outside all day where it was cloudy, rainy, windy as hell, and freezing. Fuck, I'm sorry. What got you stuck out for so long? Fought zombies and a necromancer in D&D yesterday. We finished up a two-shot D&D session today in some sewers. The classic sewer delving. I don't know. I tend to avoid sewers for one simple reason. Long ago, during my second campaign I ever DM'd, I actually had me and another co-DM because we had a group of 8 players we were trying to manage. So there were 2 of us DMing overall. And we put them down in a dungeon and we made them fight a bunch of slimes. However, one of our players polymorphed one of the slimes into a frog. And then another one of our players decided to pick up and swallow the frog whole until he realized his acids in his stomach would damage the frog, causing it to revert to being a massive cube of dissolving jelly trapped inside him, leading to a series of rolls back and forth between the jelly and our poor paladin boy until eventually he ended up shitting his pants in the sewers and had to continue the mission like that to push through to the exit. And it was terrifying. Tragic, yes, I agree. A true tragedy for a noble paladin. And sauerkraut cross-country meet when I didn't even run in. Oh, I'm sorry. Exams D&D got canceled. Fuck. Oh, well. Oh, shit, and Wako, thank you for joining in the welcoming party for Pickle Lizard and bringing them on in. What was their int? Their int was very low. I think that paladin had an 8 intelligence. Wait, would the damage have to be actual or perceived? Both of them were dealing acid damage to one another. This was during the 4th edition, if that helps at all with trying to kind of visualize what was happening. Also, your group sounds like one I would love to eavesdrop on. But we're not, my current campaign is not that group, but I do agree. Some very odd things happen. In fact, today we'll be delving into a story filled with a lot of dark meddlings, unfortunate encounters, angering of powerful forces, and feelings of betrayal. Sour Cake coming in at the tier 3 sub for 5 fucking months. Sour Cake tried to finish me off, but I'm still here. Sour Cake, but better. Damn. With that tier 3 sub, do you know what that means you have, though, Sour Cake? You have a very special emote. One I feel you shouldn't hesitate to share with everybody. Show them all the perfection of the tier 3. Show them the emote of the most cursed costume I have. Unleash your power. Oh boy. There it goes. Hell yeah. The tardy bus on the bright pink background. But, with our overheats almost gone, with new people here ready to join halfway into our story, I think it's time we can begin with a recap of what happened last time in Deorum. As many of you can now see, our story begins with only a portion of our party. 4 members. Pharaoh, the Aarakocra cleric. Malachite, the Genasi ranger. Valandria, the high elf wizard. And Perch, the warforged shade. They had found themselves in the back alley tent of Gala Derera Ertama, a member of the Derera family, well-known traders from the dark lands of Baron Verden. He presented the party with many magical items, scrolls, teaching one how to cast haste or fireball, shoes of elven kind, stealthy, undetectable, a lantern with special properties used by thieves and those wishing to keep their secrets unheard, along with many enchanted weapons and other potions. However, even having completed their bandit mission, the party found themselves not so flush to be able to throw their coin at magical items, coming in 1,000 or more gold pieces. But it seemed Gala Dorada had another option for them. But Gala had been trapped in the back alleys of the city of Auten for too long. He wished for his trade to occupy the central district, where people could more easily afford his wares. But to do such, he needed 3 things to perform his full job. First, a letter of approval from the nobles of the city, granting him full permission to trade within the market square. Second, the guarantee of the guards that they would not sequester his magical items. After all, Auten and Taverfia, as a whole, were currently embroiled in a war with the neighboring kingdom of Athrone, and as such, the military had a habit of taking magical weapons to be used. Thirdly, he would like assurances from the underground of the city to assist him with his more illicit affairs. The 4 party members felt uncomfortable diving into the underground drug and thievery trade, and said they'd be willing to speak to the guards and the nobles on Gala's behalf. In exchange, Gala told them, for each job they helped him with, he would apply a steep discount to their chosen items. With that, the party accepted and moved on to the central district to speak with a noble figure named Frederick Tever, brother to the king and uncle to the first prince of Taverfia, Ivan Tever. Using a few lies and a seal of Polemont, the party was able to find themselves in Frederick's office and speaking to him about the job he needed done. He would explain that the first prince, Ivan Tever, has been unfortunately involved in an infatuation with a noble of Tverfia. In times of peace, this would not be of any major issue. The family has other children, of course, and, well, nobility and royalty mixing has never been much of a political problem. But now, in their state of war, Frederick has made arrangements for the first prince, Ivan Tever, to marry Princess Katarina Pontvi of a neighboring kingdom, to pull their military in on their side, and to forever throw a throne off of their shores. But with the boy's infatuation and romantics at heart, it seems unlikely he would abandon his current courtship for an arranged marriage to a princess. And so the party is given an opportunity to speak with the prince, their job to find out who he is in love with, and to convince the boy to abandon his romantic pursuits in exchange for a focus on his duty and the arranged marriage. Speaking with Ivan, the party would learn he is indeed a romantic, as he spends the entire lunch they attend writing poems for the dear he has his eyes set upon. Speaking with him, they learn that her family had gone through a tragedy some time ago, and so they had lived at the castle for a short time before finding other lodgings within the city. He had never told her how he truly felt, and it was simply sending letters as a form of courtship. Bringing this information back to Frederick, the party would withhold one piece of information. When the boy had told them who she was, a woman named Rosalind Gretten, of a noble family. The party had convinced Ivan to finally make a proper move to seeking her hand, and he employed the adventurers to that end, telling them that he wished for them to go to the family's abandoned manor in the countryside and retrieve a stuffed toy that Rosalind had left behind many years ago, that it might be presented to her with a letter stating his romantic feelings for her and his hope that she would be swayed and wooed to see Ivan as a hero. This the party did not tell Frederick, his uncle, for they were unsure how they felt about the whole situation. Valandria wished to speak to Rosalind herself, find out what her feelings were on Ivan. Malachite wished to simply have it done, but the party decided first they would visit this manor, see what had gone on there, retrieve the gift, and if they did decide to meddle in Ivan's affairs, perhaps this could help them to see it done. And so Frederick allowed them free rein of the castle to question whoever they may, to find out whatever they will. For Valandria said she had a plan to get Ivan off of his romantic interest without the needs of sequestering or punishment. And so the party sought out a knight in training named Hawks Gretten, the older brother to Rosalind, and asked him a few questions about those seeking his sister's hand. They would learn that many were interested, though only a few had been frequently sending letters. One of them included another knight in training, a large man by the name of Gregory, who was in fact second of Hawks, an extremely skilled swordsman. He found himself beating Hawks many times, but being born in a lower family, he was simply a support to the Gretten Knight. Still, it seemed that this Gregory was very interested in Rosalind, and had been speaking with her many times. With that, the party then asked Hawks about the tragedy of his family. He would explain that long ago his family lived in a manor on the outskirts of the city, a large place for the Gretten family. It was overseen by his great uncle, head of the Grettens, who was interested in magic and had studied it himself for many years. He had learned many spells to summon up invisible or miniaturized servants to act for that household. But he seemed to grow ever more obsessed with perfecting this art, to create something unseen before, something more than an automaton. But all of his research and self-study would come to naught, until the day the uncle went on a year-long journey throughout the world of Deorum, seeking some mystery. When he returned, it would seem that he had found what he had been looking for. For the following weeks, more and more large figures, suits of armor animated by some mysterious magic, would appear in the manor and begin handling all business, cooking, cleaning, repairs, support staff. Every job the Gretten family could be need done would be done by the slowly growing army that his great uncle was creating. Until one night, by fate or chance, Hawks awoke in his bed. The young boy that he was afraid of the sounds a house could make at night. And as he heard a clanking, groaning sound, he found himself walking to his door and peering out. In the halls, he could see a group of 4 of the suits of armor moving down. They would stop at a distant door where he knew his cousins were sleeping, and they would enter in as a group. Then the boy would hear a strange, strangled, weeping sound, cut short. Silence would follow. Staring down the dark hall, stuck in place, Hawks would watch as the suits of armor would walk out of the room, a strange, dark liquid dripping from their hands. As they slowly walked down the hall to the next set of doors, Hawks would freeze, feeling cold in his heart as they seemed to see him, but then turn towards the next door, as if moving down the hall, replacing the bedding, simply doing their job. They would open the door and go in, and Hawks would hear a piercing scream. He would bolt from his room, down the hall to the last door, and open it, waking his sister quickly. The 2 of them would rise from their beds, mere children, as they'd sprint down the stairs and out of the building. As they'd go, they would hear more screams from the upstairs. But it was too late. For with absolute efficiency, their great uncle's servants went door by door, killing the entire family. Hawks would tell the family that it has been a decade since he or his sister had ever gone back to that manor, and he had had no wish to until his training as a knight began, and he had been thinking for a long time that whenever he should graduate, he would bring a group of the best fighters and clear out that manor to reclaim it for his family. The party would state that this would be unimportant, for they were interested in going there themselves, for ghost stories about the house had been rife, and they were great adventurers. Hawks told them if they did achieve it, he would pay them handsomely for saving his home, as long as they killed every single one of those suits of armor, and made sure to not burn down the manor in the process. He would give them 400 gold pieces and the eternal thanks of the Gretten family. Hearing this, the party would decide yes. They would place aside the concerns of the prince's romance for a moment. For this sounded straight up their alley, something they would do either way. Save the manor and receive the thanks of a noble family. Nice and simple. A way to give themselves time to think about whose side of this love mystery they would fall upon. And so the party would find themselves walking out of the city of autumn, traveling into the nearby wilderness, following a road that would lead them all the way to a manor strangely dilapidated and yet freshly painted, windows cracked or with holes in them, their frames replaced, a garden alive, vibrant, and well trimmed, yet the gate rusted, decaying, falling apart. It was as if something had been doing its best to take care of the home, but lacking proper materials was only so much it could do. As the party approached the main gate of the Gretten Estate, they would find two statue-like figures standing guard at the chained gate, like suits of armor, standing vigilant, unrusted, unworn by weather. Valandria would look between the two and simply state, "I guess it is a good thing we spoke to that ox, because now I don't believe these are statues." "No," Perch says, drawing his newly gained greatsword from his back. "But it does seem we'll have the advantage here." And with that, the party drew their weapons. Valandria summoned a bolt of flame, and they prepared to get their first strikes in on the two stalwart guards to the estate. And with that, we are caught up to where our last stream left off. The party outside the Gretten Estate, preparing to destroy these suits of armor that they do not believe to be statues for even a moment. With our recap finished, we will take a moment to check in with you all. How are you guys doing? Are you ready to watch the party assault the manor to see what other horrors lie inside? Do we have any questions or clarifications people would like before we begin the story? I know we have some newbies out there, and so we might need a moment to clarify some things. This is your opportunity. This is the last time before we begin today's story. It seems you all have a bunch of popcorn and butter going around. Please don't make part of some Shakespearean tragedy. I already know I'm being written as the comic relief. I returned to the lurk once more. Hell yeah, Phoenix. Just hide in the fireplace. We won't be able to tell. I just found out Crazy is terrible at math. Oh no. Ooh, question. I'm just like Jon Snow. I know nothing about what's going on here. Do you think spiders can dream? I guess I would say I don't know at all. I mean, obviously, there's obvious signs that certain animals can dream, so it's not an experience that's uniquely human. But I'm going to say, unless proven otherwise, I'm going to default to saying I don't believe so. I think insects and arachnids are of a nervous system structure different enough that I wouldn't assume they have some of the same features that we have, like dreaming. They're just different enough that I wouldn't assume they could do it. I'm very open to hearing evidence to the contrary, but without any prior understanding of it, my guess would be no. The real question is, do Warforged dream of electric modrons? Oh god, Gandan. Do tardigrades dream? I believe I do sometimes. I have many dreams, both grand and appropriately small. Most of them simply about the hedge in which I live. Pretty sure spiders don't even sleep the same way humans do. Yeah, no, that's it just gets kind of bonkers when you try to compare like insectoid nervous systems to like more complex animals. It's crazy how different some things can be. If an artificer creates a robot, is there a robotic god it could follow? It depends on what you mean by robot. After all, a non-sentient automaton wouldn't be concerned with thought, let alone concerns of deityism and the like. There are gods of creation, stalwart defenders, the lawful gods like Primus, who oversees the Modrons, but it's something a bit odd, I would say. And in my world, Warforged are something that are extremely rare and only come from one place. And in the place that Warforged come from, the citizens just wish to not worship the gods. They wish to be freed from the oversight, the eternal reward and punishment that the deities hold, the wall of mold that non-believers are left upon, and the divine punishment that some may be given. And so they wish to live a life free of the gods, which is why the Warforged have come to exist. But I'm afraid that is going too deep into one of our characters' backstories, into a secretive mountain in the land of Akralangi. A lore study we can most certainly have in the future, but one that is not the focus of today. Heresy. Not heresy. Simply a society that wishes to live with no gods, no kings, simply man. But with that deep lore implication dropped, with our recap out of the way, and with no further... Eric, do you know of SCP? Or SPC? Do you mean SCP? Because, yeah, I've done an SCP reading in the past. In fact, that's going to be one of the redeems for the subathon. But if we have no further questions, no further seeking of clarification, no more need for a recap or a deeper understanding, perhaps it is time to continue our story. Standing before the gate, Perch draws his great swords. Malachite are twin sickles. Pharaoh draws out her spear and prepares incantations to her secretive god. And Valandria summons a small bolt of flame in her hand. Holding her hand outward towards the suit of armor in front of her, she finishes her casting as the bolt of fire flies from her fingertips and strikes the suit of armor on its brow. However, as the bolt strikes, it is deflected off to the side and sent careening upwards. In shock, the party turns towards the suit of armor as a slow, glowing light seems to grow in its stomach, illuminating the gaps in the armor, illuminating its visor like glowing eyes. It and its twin look up as their hands reach for the swords at their hilts. They draw them, and the fight begins. With that, the rest of the party moves in quickly. Malachite closes the gap to create a good buffer between the suits of armor and the cleric at the back. Perch begins hacking away at the suit of armor in front of him with his greatsword, making sure to isolate it so the party might focus down one target at a time. Valandria begins to enter into the blade dance that she was taught, as Pharaoh, Valandria, and Malachite begin focusing their attacks on one suit of armor. A divine dagger is summoned as Pharaoh's spiritual weapon and begins plunging into the armor, opening gaps where other attacks might find purchase. As they carve away at this first suit, though, they find it difficult to find purchase. The gaps in armor that would normally expose flesh are simply hollow here, and holes punched through the armor seem to have a minimal effect on the suit. As Perch brings down a mighty crackling blow, he feels the energy of the strange green gem growing on his blade hum a dark energy. Perch feels that energy and pulls forth from it. For a moment, Perch sees himself in a strange cave, dark save for dozens of green crystals lining the walls, each humming its own note. As the hums grow, gouts of green flame erupt from the tip of one crystal and fly into another. An energy, strange and dark, that Perch grips and calls forth. As his blade punctures into the suit of armor, a gout of green flame erupts out of it, singeing into the metal and driving out the light for just a moment. As the entire suit is illuminated and Perch draws his blade from it, he sees inside a glowing sigil of dark green magic. There's a sigil inside the armor, Perch says, as he begins hacking heavily at the armor in front of him, tearing away the metal, exposing the sigil underneath. Turning about behind, Valandria sees its location and uses that to begin targeting the suit in front of her, her blade eventually finding its mark and puncturing through the metal, severing the connections of the sigil. With a deft strike, the first suit goes still, then begins to fall apart, collapsing to the ground as a collection of simple pieces of armor. Perch, on his own, begins hacking more and more heavily, slowly opening a split in the metal, going down, 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 until with one last mighty swing, it cleaves into the top portion of the sigil, severing it and causing the second suit to fall apart into its fractured pieces. Looking at the now collapsed suits of armor, Valandria takes a moment and kneels down. looking at the sigil, wishing to understand the magic that has brought these things to life. Pharaoh approaches behind. So, what is it? Pharaoh asks. As a wizard, you have some understanding, yes? As Valandria stares at the sigil, though, she finds herself stunned for a moment, lost in examining it. There are some elements that she recognizes, a portion of runes similar to how one might try to summon a permanent unseen servant. Another area similar, though drastically altered, of miniature servants. All of this, though, is connected by magic she has never seen before. A dark web, corrupted in some way. A dark green magic spirals across these sigils, binding them together, creating new effects. Something about it seems off, like a growing slime spreading across a petri dish, creating veins and channels, sickly in appearance. Valandria examines it and finds she cannot understand it, that this is not a classic magic. This is something dark, corruptive, and very, very old. Suddenly the party freezes as they hear the sound of clanging metal against stone. They look up and see a pair of suits marching across the garden, seemingly on a patrol. As they cross the clearing, one of them glances towards the gate, behind which the party stands, with the destroyed guardians at their feet. The party freezes, certain these two will suddenly spring to action at the destruction of their compatriots. But the suits simply march on their eternal rounds of the garden. Well, Valandria says, it seems these servants are quite specific in their jobs. Looking up at the chained gate, Valandria continues. I imagine those two suits won't attack us until we actually cross onto the manor's territory. It is like they know where they are supposed to be. Likely these two suits wouldn't have attacked us at any point unless we tried to get in, or with us attacking them first. Do we want to sneak in, then? Perch says, looking up at the manor doors at the end of the garden. I would prefer that, Valandria says. Avoiding a fight seems quite practical. However, we did agree to get rid of all of these, and based on the magic they are showing, I have no desire to leave any of these things fully constructed. Well then, Perch says, placing away his great sword and drawing out the maul he brings everywhere. I suppose it's time we open the gate and get into the proper fight. With that, Perch approaches the gate. With a mighty swing of his hammer, shatters the rusted metal, causing the two gate doors to fly careening into the gravel-stone garden. Falling in chunks, the party stands outside the gate, weapons ready as they hear the approaching marches of the two sentries. As the sentries reach the center of the garden, they look down the path to see the party standing outside a now destroyed gate. But then they march on. seemingly unconcerned with the gate being opened, only waiting for some other trigger to act. Well, I suppose that's one question answered. The laundry estates. I don't know if they would keep chasing us if we were to stay outside the manor's estate. Perhaps we can simply throw some attacks and then fall back and they'll let us simply stand outside the gate. Though, to be fair, Malachite says, these two were outside the gate. Yes, they might be their only guardians, though. With that, Perch places away his maul, draws his great sword. Are we ready, then? Yes, I think 2 more should be simple enough. With that, the party steps through, forming up into the garden. They creep forward and then wait for the moment that the suits get back to the center on their rounds. Now, Malachite says, as the suits begin to cross behind the rose bushes. She and Valandria rush in, each picking a target before it can properly react. Perch following up, while Pharaoh remains at a distance, supporting with her own spells. As soon as the suits see the approaching figures in the garden, they go for the short swords at their hips, draw the weapons, and proceed into the fight. This one goes much quicker than the first, as the party focus their attacks to peel through the suits of armor and to reveal the sigils. But as Valandria carves open the back of the first suit, she sees the sigil was not in the exact same place. Instead of being along the back of the suit's chest plate, she see it is instead upon the front inside of the metal, right at the bulge of the stomach. Placing her blade through the hole she carved through the back, she just barely cracks through the sigil, causing the creature to collapse into a dozen pieces. Malachite and Perch have the creature caught between the two of them and begin hacking at it greatly. They take a couple of swings from its sword themselves, though with Pharaoh's healing magic on standby, they are not overly concerned with a quick cut here or there. Eventually, Perch places a sword to the side and simply grips onto the creature, pulling the arm metal and pauldron aside, opening up the gap of its elbow so that Malachite can see inside. Peering in, she sees the sigil, and with one quick strike with her hooked blades, punctures it, severing and causing the suit to collapse apart to its many pieces. The pauldron and shoulder plate still held in Perch's hands before he drops them to the ground. The party looks about in this well-kept garden for a moment. 2 beautiful fountains stand. The roses growing at an impeccable shape. The hedges carved perfectly. A semi-maze maintained. Beautiful. Well cut. Immaculate. They begin pushing up and look all about them. In the courtyard, they can see 2 servants' entrances into the manor, alongside the main doorway. Valandria looks up and looks at Perch and smiles. Well, it seems we have the perfect choke point, no? Perch nods. Open the doors, give a bellow, let them come at us where they can only hit us 2 at a time. Sounds like the perfect plan. With that, the party moves up in ranks. Valandria and Pharaoh in the back line to support with spells. Perch, and Malachite, forming front ranks at the door. Here we go, Perch says. With a mighty kick, he causes the doors to swing open. Inside, they see the entry hall of the Gretten Manor. A few pieces of furniture placed for convenience sake, though the most interesting are the suits of armor, the statues here in the main hall. All of them turn simultaneously to the new figures, draw their swords, and rush the position. At first, the ranks hold, and the party is in a position where they can fight them simply 2 at a time. But then they hear the echoing sounds of footsteps down the stairs, as another group of 4 seem to be coming from the upstairs hall to reinforce. Shit, Malachite says, looking at this new group, ready to press into the force, giving them a greater amount of mass. What are you doing, Malachite? Valandria states, as Malachite begins to dart between the figures, heading into the room and retreating to the corner. Seeing the figure pulling into the home, the 4 suits turn their attention towards her and begin backing her into the corner, causing her to become trapped in the room. Shit! Valandria states, looking forward. With a swing, Perch drops 1, then a second of the suits. But as he steps in to try to help Malachite, the other 2 close in on him, giving no opportunity to peer in. Pharaoh screams out, "We can't see you, Malachite! I can't help!" But Malachite is stuck and taking many blows from the suits of armor. She feels herself pushed into a bloodied state, finding herself giving more and more ground, unable to keep fighting. Valandria takes 1 step forward, muttering something under her breath. She looks to Perch and says, "Do you trust me?" Perch nods. As Valandria places her hand on his back, she casts a spell she is familiar with, as an eruption of thunder shakes the ground, sending 1 suit of armor flying apart into pieces, and the other into the nearby wardrobe. Perch and Valandria are teleported into the room, arriving right behind the suits of armor, able to start providing a better assistance for Malachite. But now Pharaoh is left alone. Luckily, the suit she must face has already been injured, but as a cleric who's always focused on healing, this is a fight she's not fully prepared for. The fighting becomes bloody frenzy, a melee, without much in the way of tactics. But slowly, the party begins peeling through each suit, 1 at a time, until eventually silence fills the hall. "What were you thinking, Malachite?" Valandria states. "We had them in a choke point and you just abandoned it to go into the room to what? Get surrounded?" "They were all coming in. I wanted to try to pull them away. Try to give us a better position." "Damn it," Valandria states, as Pharaoh quickly crosses through, placing her hand on Malachite's shoulder and casting a healing spell to get her out of being near dead. "Well, I think we've probably cleared out the majority of them then," Valandria states, looking around. "After all, that group came from upstairs, and this was the one in the main hall. Still, there's no knowing how many rooms there are, and whether they also have their own guardians." "Well, we'll do a sweep of the bottom floor and then move on up to the second." "What room did Hawks say his sister's was?" The last room on the right side of the hall should be where we can find a stuffed toy for Ivan. All right. With that, the party begins moving. Gathering up at a door, they decide they will make a sweep of the entire building to try and find any more suits of armor. They find themselves in a servant's closet. Many different items seem to be left here for tending to the garden. They find shovels, trimmers, bags of seed, and several empty bags of fertilizer. It seems the servants of the house have done a good job keeping busy, tending to the garden. But as they push through into the next room, they find themselves in a small sitting room. Shelves with decaying books sat upon them. The musty smell of mothballs and rotting paper fill this room. Many couches, partially collapsing with old felt set upon them. And across the room, a single suit of armor stands behind a bar covered in bottles of alcohol and glasses. However, this suit seems to be in an inert state, unaware of the party's entrance into the room. They begin to search the place. Valandria finds herself distracted with a shelf. Many old, rotted books she begins peering through, seeing if she can find anything of interest. Malachite and Perch approach the bar, their attention taken by very different things. Malachite stares up at the wall of fine liquor, while Perch's weapon is in hand, staring at the inert suit of armor. So, should we just attack it? Perch says to Malachite. Just a moment, she says. I want to get a drink if I can. As she approaches the bar and begins to reach across the shelf to grab a bottle of wine, the suit's head lifts as its fist comes down on the counter. Malachite freezes in place as the suit reaches over and grabs the bottle of wine. Perch has his weapon drawn and pointed, while Pharaoh and Valandria draw their weapons and begin moving towards the bar. But as they run, they see the figure pick up a glass and place it down in front of Malachite and pour her out a glass of wine. As it is finished, the suit corks the bottle, places it down, and offers the glass to Malachite, who accepts it. He begins to sip. Thank you, she says. The suit nods and stares forward, no longer in its inert state, but simply neutral, waiting. The entire party approaches as Malachite sips at her wine. Perch strides forward and says, "Could I get a glass of wine as well?" The suit turns towards him and stares for a moment, before reaching down and grabbing up a glass, pouring out another for him. As it begins handing the glass across, Malachite speaks up, can I get the bottle?" as she has finished her glass off and placed it to the side. "Malachite," Valandria states. But the suit stops and stares at her, before presenting the bottle to her. She takes it, uncorks it, and begins to drink. "Interesting," Valandria states, stepping forward. "Could I have a glass of whiskey?" she states. The suit's head turns towards her, staring for just a moment, for it grabs a shot glass from beneath the bar and a clear bottle and pours her the shot of what she requested. As the suit begins to turn, Malachite pipes up again. I'm gonna need that bottle too. The suit stops, turns, and presents the bottle to Malachite. Could I get a couple more bottles, actually? With that, the suit begins moving across the bar, grabbing a pair of fine bottles and presenting them to Malachite, who begins stuffing them away in her bag as she crosses over to one of the older couches to sit and drink at her wine, enjoying it quite greatly. So, do we kill this thing? Perch states, watching the figure, seeing what it does to what he says. It gives no response, though its head turns to stare at the speaking figure. It doesn't seem to care what we say, does it? With that, Valandria reaches over and knocks over the tumble, causing whiskey to go spilling across the counter. The automaton grabs a towel, approaches, cleans up the counter, takes the glass, and places it beneath, stowing it away. Interesting. We did not try to refill it, but simply cleaned up the mess. With that, Valandria walks over to one of the bookshelves, grabs out a pair of books, and drops them on the ground. There's a sudden clanging noise as the suit steps out from behind the bar and approaches the books, picking them up and placing them back on the shelf before slowly returning to its place behind the bar. Amazing. It seems to consider this whole room its job. That is acting without orders, without commands. Fascinating. Are we going to destroy this one, though? Bert says. Perhaps not. If this one is as docile as it seems, perhaps the Grettens would want to keep it, though. I don't trust that magic that was used on it. Perhaps we'll save it for last, just in case. As Valandria turns, she sees something strange on the counter where Malachite has just placed her now empty bottle of wine, and approaches, picking up a single piece of parchment. Worn away is the ink, though still some words can be read. The reason she had stopped and looked was one word written across the top in bold. Ascrostian. The vampire empire to the far east. Their name on a parchment here. An old parchment, clearly many decades old. Valandria begins to try and read out as much as she can. Results of the Grand Ascrostian something. So much of this is worn away. Helena forfeits. Cran. Shadow. Lady E. Sevestian. Torium Ascrostia. Round 2. Removed injury double for strange. What do you think all that means? Birch says. Well, the Ascostians the empire to the far east, the vampires that rule over them. This seems to be some sort of announcement of something, but it's very old. Why would the Grettens have this? It's strange. I think I'll hold on to this for now, Elandria says, placing the note in her pouch. Let's go to the next room. All right. With that, they approach the door. First, Perch walks through and sees the grand ballroom of the family. Dusty. Cobwebs. It seems this room has had no caretaker assigned to it to keep it clean. Dilapidated paintings sit on the walls. Next in is Malachite, then Pharaoh. But as Valandria approaches the door, there's suddenly a loud whang from behind, causing her to freeze and turn. The suit of armor stands behind the bar, its arm raised, a finger extended, pointing at Valandria. Everyone turns. What does it want? I don't know, Valandria states. She steps back into the room. With her re-entrance, the suit's arm falls and returns to its neutral state. Malachite and Pharaoh return in and staring at the suit. Strange. Maybe they didn't like all of us leaving. With that, Valandria takes a step forward. I'll go, and then one of you follows me and see if it reacts. As she reaches the doorway, the suit bangs its fist on the counter and points at Valandria again. I guess it just doesn't like you, Malachite says, giggling in her drunken state. What? I didn't even take any of the drinks. Why is it angry at me? I don't know, Malachite says, starting to push past Valandria, her bottles of alcohol tucked away in her bag. In her bag, Valandria states. Hold on a moment, Malachite. Could you... With that, she hands over the Ascrostian note. Put this in your bag, please. All right. With that, Malachite places the note in her bag and begins to walk through the doorway. As she crosses, though, whang! The suit points. This time, not at Valandria, but at Malachite. I see. Does not wish for us to remove the note from this room. Oh, Malachite says, pulling out the note and dropping it on the ground. Well, easy enough. He crosses back into the room, following Perch. Valandria watches as the suit crosses the room, picks up the note, and returns it to the counter, before returning to its neutral state. I don't like leaving that, but there's not much we can read off of it anyways. Perhaps we could ask about it later. She then turns, as does Pharaoh. They all leave the drinking room and enter into the ballroom. As they approach, they see Perch frozen in the middle of the room, staring across at a painting on the wall of a young girl, pigtails, ribbons in her hair. Pharaoh approaches Perch. What are you looking at? Slowly, Perch turns towards Pharaoh. Perch, what's the matter? The rest of the party looks at him. What's that on his head? Valandria states, a slow-growing panic in her voice. As they all see thorns seemingly growing out of the brow of Perch's helmet, like a crown ringing his forehead. Perch, are you all right? But Perch does not hear Pharaoh. Perch stares ahead of him as he sees a figure he recognizes out of his prison, standing in front of him. In front of Perch stands a shifter with semi-fox-like features, red hair, a cruel, victorious smile on his face. I'm sorry, Perch, but it seems I got out of your little prison. Perhaps I can start running amok here now. No, Perch says. No what? Pharaoh states, looking at him, as Perch seems to stare at her, muttering no. How did you get out? Get out of where, Perch? You can't be here. With that, Perch's hands cross over as he grips his greatsword in both hands. Perch, what are you? A scream of pain comes out of Pharaoh's mouth as Perch swings downwards, bringing his greatsword in an overarching sweep, burying it in Pharaoh's shoulder. She screams in pain, retreating away from her former ally. Perch, what are you doing? With that, Valandria's weapons are out. Malachite is running to Perch, her twin blades prepared. Perch looks around, seeing Pharaoh on the ground, bleeding and screaming. What? What happened? Where did he go? Perch says, looking around in a panic. Where did who go? Drop it, Malachite states, pointing her weapons at Perch. What? You just attacked Pharaoh. Drop the sword. All right. With that, Perch goes to drop his greatsword, but finds he can't quite summon the will. Wait, Malachite, I think he's under a spell. What? Perch states, but as he looks towards Valandria, he stops, as in front of him, where Malachite once stood, he sees that man again. Grama. Perch grunts. How did you get out? Did you hurt Pharaoh? With that, he lifts his blade up again and brings it down, carving into Malachite, who screams out and lashes back with her own blades. In front of Perch, he now sees Malachite, carving at him with his swords. What are you doing? Perch states, backing away. Malachite, stop! He's not in his right mind. Something is... Looking around at his two injured allies, Perch runs past them and into the room. Stay away from me, Perch states. I don't know what's happening, but he's out. He's here somewhere. Perch, listen. There's nobody here. You're just... His eyes glaze over. Kurama's here somewhere. He knows it. Perch begins looking around, his sword held aloft. We need to find the caster, Valandria states, heading outwards to the middle of the room. Is there anyone else here? She begins looking around at the paintings as Malachite draws her blades and begins approaching Perch. Please, he's not... She drops her swords, approaches Perch, and punches him straight across the face with a single strike. Knock yourself out of it, Perch, Malachite states. Perch sees her and drops his greatsword to the ground. I didn't mean... His eyes glaze over as Kurama snickers at him. Let me punch you, is that right? You are always rather slow when it comes to the uptake. No! With that, Perch strikes Malachite in the forehead with a punch. Though seeing it's her, he begins running away again, trying to create as much distance between himself and his allies. As Malachite closes in, ready to knock him unconscious if she has to. Valandria begins slowly looking around the room, at the 4 paintings hung up, background scenes, a garden, a castle in the distance, and a tree hung from a swing. On it sits a little girl with pigtails, seemingly caught in a state of laughter. But she's moving. She is laughing silently in the painting. The little girl looks up from inside it and gives Valandria a little wave with her fingers before she begins laughing again. Casting Levitate. Valandria feels her feet lift off the ground as she begins floating up towards the arched ceilings above. The paintings! Valandria says. There's a person in the painting and she's fucking casting spells. With that, Valandria prepares a firebolt and throws it at the painting. But the little girl waves her hand, giggling to herself as she counterspells it. Farah, you have to destroy the paintings. But as Valandria points at the one with the little girl in it, she watches as the girl walks out of the side of the frame and disappears. Pharaoh begins looking around as she sees a little girl appear in a painting of a castle. She draws her dagger and approaches as she begins carving into the painting with her blade, destroying it. Back in the drinking room, Malachite strikes Perch across the chin twice, sending him to the ground. Perch strikes out again, asking how you escaped. They would slowly descend into a fist fight, beating each other bloody. Valandria would move forward, casting a firebolt at a second of the 4th paintings. As Pharaoh begins approaching a 3rd, draws out her dagger and begins carving it into pieces. As she does, Valandria approaches the last painting and pulls it from the wall. Holding it up, she watches as a little girl crosses into it, looks at Valandria's close-up face, and begins laughing. You think that's funny, huh? With that, Valandria summons a small bolt of fire into her hand and holds it up to the painting. Do you still think this is funny? There's a moment where the little girl's eyes seem concerned at the impending flame. But then she begins to laugh. Fine then. With that, Valandria causes the painting to be engulfed in fire as the little girl's silent giggles fade away to nothingness and ash. In the drinking room, Perch's crown of thorns disappears. As he falls to his knees, he begins to understand what is happening as a voice in the back of his mind speaks. I said snap out of it, you idiot! I'm not there! Perch looks up at Malachite, her fists bloody, as she approaches the now kneeling figure. I'm sorry, Perch says, as she strikes him again with her fists. I'm sorry, Perch says, as he feels another strike drive him flat to the ground. Malachite keeps punching, as she begins to hear a strange, echoing, weeping sound from Perch. She stops and looks down. In silence, Pharaoh and Valandria gather, looking at the burning painting frames as they stare back into the room, as a bloodied Malachite and Perch walk out. Perch's eyes downcast as he slowly picks up his sword and sheaths it. I'm sorry, Perch says. It wasn't your fault, Valandria begins, but Perch seems to be avoiding eye contact with everybody, particularly Malachite and Pharaoh. Let's just keep looking. With that, the party begins moving through the last few rooms of the home. The dining room filled with massive tables and chairs, well cleaned, though devoid of any obvious suits. The party pushes on into the kitchen, where they freeze for a moment, seeing several suits lined up here in this room, one seemingly in inert state directly in front of the stove. The party then crosses southward, stopping just for a moment to consider if they should attack the suits here. Let's check the rest of the rooms first. Make sure that everything is handled before we start picking fights. Finally, they find themselves in the storage room. Looking about, they see most of the food is long since spoiled, rotted, some of it seemingly in a state more like dirt than anything else. Several casks sit here, bearing the smell of vinegar and long, spoiled alcohol. Looking about the room, though, they find a strange set of handles in the wall. As they open them, they find a dumbwaiter leading up to the second floor. I wonder where this goes exactly, Valandria states. Only one dumbwaiter in the entire house. Strange. With that, the party regathers in the central hall at the base of the stairs. Well then, let us head upstairs, see what else there is in this home, and once we feel like we've got everything explored, we can deal with the last few suits, yes? With that, Perch nods. Quiet, his eyes still downcast. They head upstairs. Oh gosh, I think I have this a little confused. There we go. As they find themselves on the second floor of the estate. Rooms line one side of the hall, but the party begins making their way downward. The last room, on the left. Going inside, the room seems decorated and furnitured for a small child. And sitting on the bed, they find a stuffed rabbit, somewhat moldy and moth-eaten, but still there. Valandria grabs it up and hands it to Malachite to place in her bag with the bottles of alcohol. Seems that is what we came here to find, yes? With that, the party nods. Well, I'm just going to cast a quick spell. With that, Alondria casts Detect Magic, hoping to find the location of any suits of armor they might have missed, wishing to leave none in the home. 4 pings beneath their feet, the suits in the kitchen. 1 downstairs and down the long hall, the bartender. But 3 more behind this last door at this end of the hall. Be ready. There's magic in there. As Valandri approaches, though, there's one more source of magic. Something very powerful, very concentrated. Something sickly and horrific within. With a dash, the party break into the final room and begin looking about. Inside, they find 3 suits of armor, though these appear to be in several different states. One they find placed in the center of a magical circle, bent over, its back metal splayed open, revealing all of its internals to the world, seemingly incomplete. On the far wall are 2 more, again with pieces of their armor removed, scratchings and sketchings of the different insignia exposed to the world. It seemed these suits were either being repaired or had never been finished, and simply were left here in this large, office-like room. The party begins going about, finding many papers across the tables, searching. Valandria finds a book, begins peering through it. Inside it holds many spells. Invisible servant, tiny servants, and an interesting one, dragon's breath. Give me a moment. I want to start trying to copy some of this down. With that, Valandria draws out her own spell book and begins copying over some of the magic the practitioner here had been learning. Perch stands guard over the suits, his weapons drawn, avoiding eye contact with Malachite and Pharaoh as they cross through a set of doors into a dark bedroom. Dust and cobwebs fill the room, alongside a rotted smell. In the far corner, they see a piled mass of fungus and mold. It seems meals had been continually sent up this dumbwaiter into this room, but as they arrived, were never eaten, allowed to pile up on the floor and rot away to nothing. One area of the room, though, held no cobwebs. It's simply a misshapen lump. The bed at the far side of the room looked as if it had a figure asleep in it, covered in blankets. A few strands of long hair on the pillows. Quietly, Pharaoh and Malachite approach, arriving at the edge, weapons drawn. Malachite reaches out, grabs the blankets, and in one swift motion, pulls them free. Though they seem to catch for a moment, there's a small tug and tear as they are ripped away. In an instant, both Malachite and Pharaoh cover their noses and fight back the urge to retch as the smell of rotting flesh is released, as pieces of skin stuck to the blanket are pulled free, unveiling the mummified husk and the rotting internal organs it had. Laid on the bed in a fetal position is a skeletal figure, still wrapped in skin, still reeking of rotted flesh. Laid the figure of the great uncle of the Gretten home. They too cover their noses as they stare at the fetal creature before them, obviously dead for many years. Disgusting, Malachite says, as she grabs the sheets beneath it and begins pulling at them to recover it. But as she yanks, it rolls, and its fetal position is now facing towards them. And they both scream and back away as its eyelids are open, and its still damp eyes twitch and stare at them. Green, sickly veins spread across them like a creeping slime, replacing its veins and giving the eyes a dark greenish hue. They begin to roll in their sockets, looking in all directions, darting about as if in a permanent state of REM. They also hear a momentary escape of air as the corpse was tilted onto its side and its rotted organs were compressed again in a new way. With the scream, Perch and Valandria come running into the room and stare at the figure in the bed. Skeletal, emaciated, rotting from the inside out, yet its eyes still fully alive, enmeshed in that dark insignia-based magic, roiling, looking about, desperate. Malachite finds herself unable to stare at it anymore and goes to the back of the room, puking onto the pile of rot and mold. Valandria approaches slowly. Drawing her dagger, she looks down at the strange figure. What in the world happened to you? Either way, it's over. With that, she plunges her dagger into the back of the skull. It pierces easily through the long ago decayed skull and finds itself in the paste that was once this creature's brain. As she pulls out, a dark green liquid begins leaking from the hole in the skull, and the roiling eyes begin to sink, then swell, as they roll from the sockets and onto the ground. Miraculously, they freeze and stare upward at Valandria and Perch. I need a moment, says Malachite as she runs out of the room. I'll go see if I can help her, says Pharaoh, who then exits. Malachite finds herself still heaving into the fireplace, and so Pharaoh sits down at a nearby counter. and finds a journal written by the master of the Gretten household. I have spent decades of my life studying magic, transmutation, evocation, conjuration, all of it seeking a way to create something to set the Grettens apart. A perfect servant, not some simple automaton that you give an order and it achieves, but something able to serve as an intelligent figure. I would say my only option is to travel to Authorial or Aothen, to go to the school with the elves, but those damned creatures have informed me it would take many decades to be considered a true wizard, and I get access to the experimental magics I'm after. I'm only human. I don't have that kind of time. Later entry. Failure, failure, failure again! Every time I think I'm making progress, it freezes. It's as if the winds of magic themselves refuse to breathe life and intelligence into something meant to serve. I will find it. No matter how much I have to spend or how far I have to search, I will find it. I've sent out many letters asking every intelligent figure I can think of, every magically attuned in the world who would be willing to listen. The elves in the Authorial and Aothen refuse to even acknowledge my pleas. I guess I'm a simple, home-taught human to them. A magician, not a mage. Zolkia was more curious about my plight, but unwilling to act without the approval of the Aothen. Far across in the schools in the lowlands, they'd be willing to enter me in, but it seems I have already surpassed most of their early students. And while I would be given freedom to experiment, there's no real help they could provide me. I did receive one interesting response. I laughed it off as some country bumpkin, but it's the first affirmation of anything I've ever received. Some elder in a village in the northwest, from a land I've never even heard the name of before, says that in the woods nearby they have an elder woman who has long been practicing experimental magics, making things up to serve their needs, not simply following the rote of the mage schools. Apparently she has heard my plight and might have an answer for me. I'm not going to spend everything on this stupid rumor, but I'm including this place in the trip I'm taking. At this stage, a long shot seems to be all I have. A year I spent traveling the world, visiting every magical site, every school, every master I could convince, bribe, or beg to speak with me. And it was some backwater farming village that finally gave me an answer. That woman in the woods was a terror, for sure, but one willing to listen, one willing to teach me a new type of magic. Something she said would achieve exactly what I was looking for. And the only payment she wished was a warning. She says it's dangerous magic, but she didn't stop teaching it to me. She told me if I should be consumed by it, that she will claim what is owed, but as long as I'm a practical and patient man, things will be achieved. I am practical. I've been patient my entire life. But as I use this inscription for the first time, as I watch my creation come to life, imbued with that peace I had to give up, I know I won't stop. Not here. Sparrow peers deeper and deeper into the journal. The entries begin to slowly become less refined. The first to go is the fine handwriting. No more curving edges, coils of artistry, no more fine connected letters. Everything becomes straightforward and blocky as he goes on about his experiments, as each new suit proves its ability, its power. Farah finds herself stopping at a later entry. Seems the fine ink here has been replaced with some sort of kohl pencil. It's unclear why. It's taking so much out of me. They're amazing. They're perfect. And I can't stop, but I will take a break to try out something new. A new way to imply this inscription upon the paintings, to imbue them instead of with a servile intelligence. Instead, with a fraction of a personality. My experiments with Rosalind seem to be a success, but the girl seems somewhat scarred by the process. I don't think I shall repeat this in the future. The painting is amazing, but confined. My purpose is the servants. After the handwriting goes the logic. There's no longer theorizing propositions in his writings. Simply results scrawled out. The date. Suit made. Works right. Correct. All good. Must go. Keep going. Will make more. Go more. Is more. Make more. Clean the house. No intruders. My orders have to be followed. Clean it. Maintain the garden. Trim garden. Clean kitchen. Food. Serve. Serve. Clean intruders. Clear. Kill. Clean. All not supposed to be here. My home. Serve my home. I am home. Me. Serve. Kill intruders. Clean the rooms. Clear. 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 Clean. Clear. Serve. Serve. Scrawlings go into a madness. An unprecedented madness that degrades out of itself. As Pharaoh begins panning through the pages, she finds herself staring down at a page filled with markings, like a child pretending to write a language. They're random scrawlings and swirls of an imitation of writing, as if the journal keeper wished to maintain their habits, no longer knew what they meant. Further and further, until there are pages that are simply filled with charcoal, scratched across each line, as if its purpose was to fill the page with the blackness. No longer a sense of writing, but simply the job is to put the charcoal on the page. The second to last page is pitch black and shriveled, like someone had grabbed a bottle of ink and poured it on it. Job done. Finally, the last page holds in ink the dark insignia on the suits of armor, scrawled out, and where the ink has bled through the previous page, not written by anyone, but created through the energies here. In the other room, Perch kneels down to these strange green glowing eyes. Veins like green mold spread across them as they stare up at him. Perch picks them both up and looks at these dark horrors in his hands, reminders of the now dead husk beside them. Melandria stares. Detect magic active, and these things are roiling sources of energy. Magic, dark and ancient, contained in an unbearable amount within them. Disgusting. With that, Perch throws one of these eyes against the far wall and watches it squish and explode into a spray of green viscera across the wall. He then holds up the second eye, closing his fingers around it, ready to crush it into nothing. When suddenly, "Stop that!" a voice screams in his mind. "What?" Rich says. Looking around, though, he's not in the room, but a black void, a shadowy place, where in the distance sees the silhouettes of trees. "I'm sorry to have said it like that, friend," says a voice. "What I mean to say is, please, don't destroy those. They're quite valuable to me." Perch looks around, the source of the voice. "What do you mean?" "What I mean is I have spent years marinating those in the powers they needed to become what they are. They are very, very valuable to me." "What did you do here?" "Me? Well, I did nothing there. I simply told the man what he wanted to know. How to cast a spell to make the perfect servants. I did warn him, however, of the cost." "What do you mean?" Well, you see," she says. "I told him the insignia would work to imbue the suits of armor with wisdom, just enough to let them operate like an intelligent servant, able to take orders, but also to know what their duties are. But that wisdom had to come from somewhere. From him. He was a wise man, and could spare a bit for one or two servants. I told him if he pushed things too far, he might lose himself. Unfortunately for him, it seems as though wisdom went, his intelligence remained, and he kept pursuing more servants out of a force of habit, a memory of what he had been doing till now. And so he simply kept making them, one after another, until, well, he had drained himself completely of it, leaving nothing but a man trapped in the eternal nightmare, marinating those two beautiful eyes, now one. Why would you do this? Perch asked. I just told you. I wanted to make those, and we had an agreement, that man and I. I had answers to long, secretive questions, long forgotten magics that he wished to know. Maybe she could answer our questions, says the voice in the back of Perch's mind. No, we can't trust her. Why can't you trust me? I might know what the two of you are after. With that, the minds of Perch and Karama rose. As Perch turned, so did the figure of Karama beside him towards the voice in this shared mental space. I'll be honest, I was not expecting this myself. You're a very interesting pair, aren't you? I can see why you would have so many questions for the universe. Perhaps I could answer them. Perch takes a step back, or Karama takes a step forward. Could you? Karama states. We can't trust you, Perch says, after what happened to him. Listen, my friend. I always warn of the downsides of my gifts. It's up to you to not fall into them. And besides, how's this for a deal? If you bring that eye to me, intact, into my possession, in exchange, I will answer all the questions of yours that I am able to. No further cost. Like I said, those eyes are very precious to me. Perch stares into the darkness. I need a moment, he says. Take your time, dearie. All I want is the eye. Perch finds himself back in the room, the eye clutched tightly in his hand. Aren't you going to destroy it? The laundry estate's looking at him. I don't know if I can, says Perch. Unwrapping his fingers, he stares down at the strange eye with its dark green veins and the answers to the questions of his life within grasp. Here, at the crossroads, at the dilemma, is where we will be ending today's stream. Thank you all for joining me today, especially to our newcomers, Pickle Wizard and Bardigrade, right? The Bard Tardigrade. And hello to you too, RW Gemini. I hope you all enjoyed today's story time, whether you've been keeping up the whole time or whether this is your first foray into the story of my party. What do you think of today's tale? Of the dark suits of armor, the horror of this house's history, and of the strange figure that has spoken to Perch? What should the party do with this new figure amongst them, this dark object in their hands? What is the creature that has spoken to them? What does it want with this dark enchanted eye? So he made animated armors or unseen servants, infused them with some of his wisdom, then broke himself in the process. Yes, if you want to know, little Pink Bowser, there is a very little known rule within the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Something that befalls any creature whose wisdom falls to 0 or lower. Yeet! What happens is they find themselves trapped in a demiplane. The demiplane of nightmares, where many dark and horrific sights can befall them. And it was there that this man was trapped, unable to die for over a decade. As his body withered and rotted, his mind was kept just barely alive, so that the nightmare and suffering could create a very unique sort of eye. Definitely not some sort of hag. Is that what you think, Little Pink? Well, we will simply have to see next weekend. However, next weekend we will be pushing very close to our subathon. So thank you all for joining me today. I hope to see you guys next weekend for Mass Effect D&D story time. And then the great big subathon. I hope you all are excited and have enjoyed today's story. I would like to wish you all a good night. But before we go, I think you all know what comes next. A growing pattern where we should find someone to raid. So, any suggestions out there for small-time streamers who are live right now that we could check out? I'll watch your next D&D talk and the subathon. Hell yeah, Bardigrade. Glad to hear you're excited. Well, any suggestions out there for a raid? None of my usuals seem to be live. I have nobody live right now. I can look at popular ones. Well, it seems like we got some people like Project Melody and Bow are live. Those are some pretty big boys who probably don't need the raid, but we can definitely send you guys along if you're still looking for some entertainment. I wouldn't mind. I'll wait another moment to see if there are any big suggestions, but if not, I think I might send you guys along to... Oh, wait. Yuzu? Let's see here. Yuzu. Is that... Is that their full name, Pickle Wizard? Ooh, Adam Plays. All right, I'll check out Adam Plays and Yuzu. Oh, wait, stop. That's actually a name? That's not a fucking... Okay. I'll take a look at that. Yuzu. Let's see here. Who's Yuzu? Is he just chatting at 4:01? Harley Darkfire. Interesting. Oh, okay. I have no idea who they are, but Lethal Lucidity is in my recommended, and they have 12 viewers. All right. Give me a second. I'm going to check this person out. Oh, yeah. I think we've actually rated them once before. I think I'm pretty down for handing ourselves on off. I have no clue what fucking game this is, but it seems actually a little interesting. I don't know. How are you guys feeling? Want to check out what looks like a little bit of a vampire bat? And whatever this retro game is? Well then, let's get you all going. Thank you again for joining me for D&D. I wish you all a good night. And just wait. We'll be seeing each other very soon.